Welcome, dreamers, to the realm where memory fades into myth, and myth breathes in the quiet spaces between stars. We drift beyond the veil of time, into a story as old as yearning itself. The tale of a paradise whispered in every tongue, a garden where perfection once bloomed, then slipped like mist from the hands of humankind. This is not a tale of punishment, nor of fire and wrath, but of mystery, of longing, of a lost world that has haunted the human spirit across centuries. Before we embark on this journey through time's softest echoes, if these ancient whispers resonate with your soul, let your presence be known through a gentle like, and join our circle of dreamers by subscribing, so we may continue these nightly wanderings into history's hidden realms. And you, dear from which corner of the world you arrive tonight, share with us your time and place of dreaming, and let the quiet rhythm of this global gathering soothe you, as we drift together toward the forgotten gate of paradise. Close your eyes now, and let the breath of Eden guide you home. They say that every myth has a root, a seed, buried deep within the earth of memory, watered by the rain of centuries, and warmed by the sun of wonder. And so, we begin, not with certainty but with longing, for the Garden of Eden was never simply a place. It was a dream, shaped by silence, carried on wind, and remembered in the quiet longing that lives in every soul. In the earliest hush of creation, before history took its first breath, there lived a vision of perfect garden. Eden, a name that rolls gently like the last sigh before sleep. In Hebrew, it means delight, pleasure, a place of wonder, untouched by sorrow, a sanctuary between the known and the unknowable, between time and timelessness. Yet the garden was never charted on any true map. No border was carved into stone. No traveler returned with tales of its fragrance. It exists in the liminal, that realm where dreams overlap with truth, and faith tugs gently at the sleeve of fact. Eden lies not just in the dust of ancient Mesopotamia, but in the shadows behind our eyelids. And tonight, we seek it. The earliest echoes of Eden arise from the book of Genesis. In slow, reverent cadence, it tells of a garden planted eastward in Eden, where rivers flowed and fruit hung in abundance. But what kind of garden was this? Was it a place of trees and light, or of truths and mystery? Was it ever meant to be found, or only to be remembered? The narrative tells of two trees, one of life and one of a knowledge of good and evil. Together, they root the garden not in geography but in symbol, in mystery, the tree of life, a vision of immortality, the tree of knowledge, a key to awakening, both at once a gift and a boundary. And at the center of this still sun-dappled paradise walked humanity. Two figures, Adam and Eve. But even here, we must slow. The tale is not one of mere origin, but of presence. In the story's beginning, humans do not toil. They walk beside the divine in the cool of the day. There is no striving, only being. It is a world unmarred by shame. For a time, but even before the serpent coils its questions, attention exists. The garden, for all its beauty, is not endless. It has edges, it has rules, it has a gate. And what is a gate, if not a reminder that something lies beyond it? So we ask, was Eden a real place, or was it always meant to vanish, to remain half-glimpsed in the mists of time? Some believe the rivers named in Genesis, the Piscean, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates, mark Eden's true coordinates. They point to ancient Mesopotamia, the land between rivers, now cradled by Iraq and parts of Iran, Syria, and Turkey, the cradle of civilization. Yet, those rivers have shifted over millennia. Their names echo differently across tongues. Some have vanished altogether, others changed course. The land remembers, but it remembers softly. In this shifting terrain, archaeologists have searched. In vain, the Sumerians, too, dreamed of a garden, a divine place called Dilmun, where the gods began their work. It was pure, clean, radiant. There, sickness did not exist, nor death, nor sorrow. Sound familiar? Eden's reflection in an older pool. And so the mystery deepens. Is Eden a memory borrowed from older dreams, or are all such dreams remembering the same paradise differently? The Babylonians told of a garden atop a mountain, the realm of their gods, hidden from mortal eyes. The Greeks spoke of the Elysian fields, a resting place for the Hindus dreamt of Mount Meru, a golden mountain encircled by heavenly rivers. And even the Norse imagined Asgard, reached by the Rainbow Bridge, a realm of peace beyond the reach of death. Every culture has its Eden. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery, that a god of peace, of innocence, of harmony exists in every myth, because it exists in every human longing. We did not invent Eden, we remembered it, and yet memory deceives. The Garden of Eden has no ruins to unearth, no stone walls to clear of vine and dust. It leaves behind no temples, no inscriptions, no broken idols. Its only relics are the stories we whisper when the world grows quiet. But not all voices agree. Some scholars believe the Eden story was never about geography at all. They suggest it is a moral tale, a symbolic map of human consciousness, a journey from innocence to awareness, from unity to duality, to the world we now know. The trees, they say, are metaphors, life and knowledge, harmony and separation. In choosing the fruit, humanity crossed a threshold, not into punishment, but into becoming, and so Eden becomes not just a lost place, but a lost state of being, a time before time, when to exist was enough. But if Eden was lost, where did it go? That, dear dreamer, is a question whispered through centuries. Some believe it sank beneath the shifting sands, buried by the flood. Others say it lies beyond this realm, in a dimension untouched by time. Still others claim it was sealed, hidden by divine decree until the end of days. And there are those quiet ones who say the garden was never lost at all, only veiled, that the doorway to Eden remains. If one knows how to see, they point to the ancient mystics who spoke of inner gardens. The Gnostics, for example, believed Eden lived within the soul, that it could be reached not by foot, but by awakening, that the serpent was not tempter but teacher, that the fruit did not curse, but opened eyes. Such views were silenced, scattered, yet their echoes remain, like wind rustling unseen leaves. And what are those rivers? The ones said to flow from Eden's center, the Piscean, whose location is unknown, the Gihon, sometimes linked to the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, whose modern banks once cradled Uruk-Akkad Babylon. Could they have once flowed from a single source, now fractured in satellite images, ancient beds that no longer flow? Could they be the veins of a vanished Eden? No one knows. And perhaps that is the point, for Eden, in its truest form, is not a garden we may rediscover with spade and satellite. It is a silence, a stillness, a whisper in the soul when all the noise falls away. It is the ache we feel when beauty, the longing that follows peace, the tear that glistens not from sorrow, but from the memory of something we cannot name. And yet, still we search, in dusty libraries and sacred texts, in jungles and mountains, in forgotten myths and whispered prayers, in the mirror of water and the shimmer of dusk. We search, not just to find Eden but to remember it, to glimpse, if only for a moment, that ancient gate, and wonder what waits on the other side. And now, dear traveler of forgotten dreams, for the garden may be lost, but its roots stretch far. And in those roots, in the winding histories of those who remembered it, we may yet find the next clue. Let us follow the Rivas, into the twilight of the first civilizations, beneath the dust of deserts and the shifting skin of centuries. The rivers still remember. Though their waters have wandered, though their names have faded like worn inscriptions, their memory lingers in the veins of the earth. To seek the Garden of Eden, we must follow the rivers, not merely in geography, but in story, in myth, in silence. Genesis speaks of 4 rivers flowing from a single source in Eden, a wellspring at the heart of paradise, from which the world unfolded like petals from a blossom. The names are ancient, yet oddly familiar: Pishon, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Hiddekel, many believe, is the Tigris. Parath is more widely accepted as the Euphrates. These 2 rivers cradled the fertile Crescenda, birthplace of writing, kingship, and wonder. But the Piscean and Gihon remain ghosts, slipping through cartographic fingers. Are they real, symbolic, or both? Some scholars place the Piscean in the east, winding through a land of gold called Hab. Others suggest it flowed through the Arabian Peninsula, or perhaps along an ancient bed now buried beneath Kuwait in the sands of Saudi Arabia. Satellite imaging reveals the path of a long dry river, its channel snaking silently through Arabia like a forgotten artery. It may have flowed in the time before cities, before kings, before the world turned rigid with history. This, some believe, was the Piscean and Gihon, a river encircling the land of Kusha. Some traditions equate Kush with Nubia, or with Ethiopia. Could the Nile be the Gihon? Or is this another metaphor veiled in mystery? To trace the rivers is to trace the breath of the earth itself. These waters shaped the lands we call ancient Mesopotamia, the land between rivers. And perhaps, before Babel rose or Uruk breathed, they cradled something older, something not yet touched by time. Imagine the world as it might have been before myth became memory. A green land, a confluence of rivers, birds flitting through fig trees, a breathless peace. Archaeologists have long searched this land for signs not of Eden but of the first dwellings of humanity. In southern Iraq lies Eridu. It is one of the oldest known cities, whispered about in Sumerian lore as the place where kingship first descended from the heavens. Eridu stood near the marshes where fresh water meets salt, where reeds grew tall, and boats of woven papyrus slid across mirror-still waters. Could this place, this sacred confluence, have once mirrored the story of Eden? In Sumerian texts, the god Enki, lord of wisdom and water, dwelt in a place of abundance. His temple rose from the water like a lotus. It was called the Eabzu, the watery deep. In its description, scholars hear echoes of Eden. Not far from here rose other ancient cities, Ur-Lagashnip, each with temples, ziggurats, and tales of creation carved into clay tablets. The Epic of Gilgamesh, born of this land, tells of a paradise at the edge of the water place of immortality, guarded by scorpion men and shrouded in mist. Again, the garden appears. The ancients, it seems, were obsessed with origins, with lost purity, with that place before the fall. But why? Perhaps because, as civilizations rise, they are already haunted by what they lost to become. Eden, then, is not just a beginning. It is a reflection, a haunting, a garden always just beyond the horizon. And still, the rivers flow. The Tigris and Euphrates, though dammed and altered, still win through modern lands, through cities, through ruins, through forgotten battlefields. But their waters remember. They whisper along ancient banks. They feed the soil where ziggurats once rose like stairways to heaven. They may not lead to Eden, but they lead to stories. There is a site El Brocken, northeastern Syria, older than even Eridu here. Archaeologists found a strange pattern, a city without a clear center, a collection of small villages gathered around a sacred mound. No walls, no king. In the midst of this silence, they found hundreds of tiny clay eyes, just the eyes staring, watching. Perhaps votive offerings, perhaps something else. No one knows. But they are ancient, as old as memory. They watched before temples, before priests, before the world had rules. Perhaps they watched Eden fade. Farther to the west lies Göbekli Tepe, much older still, nearly 12,000 years old, predating writing, and even agriculture, a circle of stones etched with animals, watching the stars, buried deliberately, then rediscovered beneath the Anatolian soil. Its purpose, unknown. Its builders, forgotten, but its pillars speak of reverence, or memory, of something once known, now only felt. Some whisper that it was a temple to a vanished paradise, that these stones mark the threshold of the fall, the moment humans turned from harmony to mastery. Could Eden be older than the Bible, older than language? Could the garden be a memory not of a place, but of a world before names? Even the rivers suggest it. In the earliest myths, rivers flowed not just with water, but with power. There were lifelines, deities, thresholds. To cross a river was to cross into another realm. The Piscean and Gihan, then, may not be earthly at all. They may be the boundary between knowing and unknowing. And when Eden was sealed, when the gate was closed, perhaps the rivers turned dry, or turned inward. Still, we follow because rivers do not forget. They only go underground. There is an old Mesopotamian tale of a garden tended by the goddess Inanna. There grew the halupu tree, planted by the gods, inhabited by strange spirit. Inanna sought to build a throne and a bed from its wood, but a serpent had nested in its roots. The serpent again. Inanna calls upon Gilgamesh to cut it down. He does, and from the wood of the tree, a throne and a bed are made. The garden is transformed, the symbols rearranged. Another echo of Eden, another serpent, another transformation. The rivers, again, are there. They carry these stories like silk, depositing them in myths, washing them through generations. The river is not a place, it is a memory in motion. Perhaps Eden was never on the map because Eden was always in the flow. In the song of the stream, in the silence between waves, in the breath of wind through reeds. It waits just beyond the next bend. And so we continue, down the river, through shadow toward the dawn of our ancestors, toward the lands where memory becomes clay, and clay becomes story, toward the mystery of a people who remembered the garden, even if they never found it. As the rivers curl through the dust of ages, they lead us to the quiet libraries of forgotten time, to the cradles of civilization where myth was first carved into clay, and where memories of paradise were etched with styluses upon tablets, still damned from the breath of creation. Here, in the deep heart of ancient Mesopotamia, voices once whispered through the reeds and rose like smoke toward the stars. They spoke not in ink but in impressions pressed into earth. Tablets of cuneiform, brittle now, but once soft with meaning. These were not just records. They were vessels of thought, memory, longing, and among their many stories of gods and kings, storms and stars are echoes, faint but persistent, of a garden before forgetting. In the Sumerian city of Nippur, scribes wrote of a place called Dilmun. It was not Eden, but it was close, described as pure, bright, untouched by death or disease. Dilmun was a sacred land where the gods walked freely, where animals bore no venom, where darkness had not yet touched the world. Sound familiar? In the myth of Enki and Ninhursag, Dilmun is portrayed as a paradise in need of water. The god Enki, lord of the freshwater abyss, brings life-giving streams to its soil. As water flows, fruit springs forth. Life begins, trees blossom, creation stirs. This story is older than the Hebrew Genesis by millennia, and yet the shape of the tale is hauntingly similar. A garden, a god, a woman, a serpent, a fall. In one version, Enki consumes sacred plants. Ninhursag, the goddess of life, becomes enraged. She curses him, he falls ill, and from his aching ribs, she eventually brings healing. Some scholars wonder if this is the root of the Genesis story. A garden, a forbidden act, a wound in the side, and a woman, but these are only echoes, shadows of myth playing across the walls of time. The tablets themselves are brittle, cracked, incomplete. Many were uncovered from the ruins of Nineveh in the library of the Assyrian king Ashur. Thousands of clay fragments, gathered and buried beneath the dust of war, unearthed in the 19th century, and still being read today. Among them, the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature, a story of grief, immortality, and a search for meaning. And within that tale, a vision of a garden beyond the edge of the world. After the death of his friend Enkidu, Gilgamesh journeys in sorrow. He crosses perilous lands. He enters the realm of the Scorpion Guardians, passes through a tunnel of darkness, and arrives at the Garden of the Gods. In this radiant place, trees bear precious stones instead of fruit. Carnelian leaves shimmer in the eternal twilight. Lapis lazuli glimmers in the blossoms. It is not Eden, but it is paradise, a place of beauty untouched by death. And still, it is only a threshold. Gilgamesh does not stay. He moves on, seeking the secret of eternal life. He finds Utnapishtim, the Mesopotamian Noah, who tells him of the great flood, of the gods' wrath, of the saving ark. Another echo, another story beneath the story. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh of a plant that can restore youth. Gilgamesh finds it, but before he can use it, a serpent steals it away. Again, the serpent. Again, the loss. Again, the longing. So many stories, so many voices in the clay, pointing backward, always backward, to a time before the ache. But what if Eden is not found in the content of the stories, but in the form? A tablet is a memory made tangible. It is earth-shaped by thought. Perhaps Eden lies in that act, the turning of soil into story, the attempt to hold on to something the soul knows but cannot explain. The scribes of old did not only record, they dreamed. They reached back, and in doing so, they left us a trail of symbols, like footprints in the mud after rain. In the myths of Inanna, the queen of heaven, we find another garden. Hers is one of shadow and transformation. In one story, she descends into the underworld, passing through 7 gates, each time removing a piece of clothing or adornment. By the time she reaches the final gate, she is naked and vulnerable. She dies, but she returns. Her journey is not one of punishment, but of revelation, of descent and return. Is this not also the shape of Eden, a journey, a longing to return? Perhaps Eden is not behind us, but beneath us, not in the sky, but in the soul's underworld, in the stories that ask, what have we lost? Among the clay tablets is another tale of the myth of Adapa, a man created by the god Ea, wise, but not immortal. One day, Adapa breaks the wing of the south wind. He is summoned before the high gods. Ea warns him, do not eat or drink anything offered to you. But in heaven, the gods offered him the bread and water of life. Obedient to Ea, Adapa refuses, and so he is denied immortality. A man offered eternal life, who refuses, a reversal of Eden, and yet, the same ache. These myths do not agree, but they remember. They remember the garden not as a fixed place, but as a longing, a question, a story, and perhaps that is what truly matters. Eden is not where we came from, but what we remember losing. It lives in the stories carved in clay, in the cracks between tablets, in the words that crumble when touched, and in the silence that follows. As we brush away the dust of centuries, we find not answers, but offerings, fragments, echoes, whispers, and so we gather them, one by one, to build a garden, not of trees and rivers, but of memory and mystery. A garden of words. Let us now leave the libraries of earth and descend deeper still, into the hills and myths of ancient lands, where another people dreamed of paradise in their own tongue. Let us journey to Eden. As spoken in Hebrew, the winds of time drift eastward now, toward a people who carried their stories like lanterns through the wilderness, a people who remembered the garden not only in myth, but in scripture, in sacred breath, in the letters that shaped the world. The Hebrews did not speak of Dilmun or the Abzu. Their paradise was not hidden in the stones of Mesopotamian ziggurats or the golden gardens of Gilgamesh. There, Eden was Eden, a word shimmering with mystery, a name with no clear etymology yet heavy with meaning. In Hebrew, Eden is believed to mean delight, pleasure, or bliss. But it is more than that. It is a whisper of something lost and longed for, a place spoken of not with certainty but with reverence. The book of Genesis, written in the ancient Hebrew tongue, opens not with myth, but with rhythm, with poetry. In the beginning, 3 words that unfold a universe, not with weapons, not with war, but with light. And there was an evening, and there was morning. The rhythm pulses like a heartbeat. In this sacred cadence, we find the first garden, not a wilderness tamed, but a paradise planted, deliberate, designed. Genesis says, the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, A small phrase, easy to overlook. But consider, God plants, with care, with intention, with hands, perhaps metaphorical, perhaps divine. This is not a wild land stumbled upon, but a sanctuary crafted, not found, but gifted. And in that garden, the elements gather. Earth, water, trees, breath. From the dust of the ground, Adam is formed. Adam, whose name means man, but also soil. He is not born, he is shaped. The breath of life is whispered into him. Not commanded into being, but breathed, and he is placed, not left. In the garden, placed to tend, to keep. This is not a place of idle. Eden is not a vacation. It is a sacred trust, a space of stewardship. The garden contains every tree that is pleasing to the eye and good for food. And at its center, 2 trees. Not one, the tree of life, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Not opposites, but companions. Life and awareness. And understanding, the command is gentle but firm. Of every tree you may eat, but not of the tree of knowledge. Why? The text does not say, it leaves silence. A space for wonder, a space where mystery dwells. Eve enters not from Adam's side in violence, but in sleep. A rib is taken not with pain, but with poetry. She is called woman, because she was taken from man. Yet, in the next breath, Adam says, bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. This is not hierarchy. It is recognition, a mirror, and they are both naked, and they are not ashamed. This perhaps is Eden's true heart, not the trees or the rivers, but the innocence, the absence of shame, the presence of presence. But it does not last. The serpent appears not as a monster, but as a whisperer. It asks not a command, but a question. Did God really say? The first crack in the world is doubt. Eve eats, Adam eats. Their eyes are opened, and they know, but what do they know? Not evil alone, not corruption. They know good and evil, the full spectrum, the duality, the paradox, and in that knowledge, they see themselves. And in seeing, they feel shame, they hide, they cover, they fear. And Eden begins to fade. But notice, they are not cursed for eating. The serpent is cursed. The ground is cursed. But the humans are clothed, protected, even as they are sent out. This is no tale of wrath. It is a tale of transformation. They are not destroyed. They are exiled. And the gate to Eden is sealed. Cherubim are placed at its entrance, with a flaming sword that turns every way, a vivid image. But enigmatic are they guards, or reminders. The sword turns every way not to slay, but to bar the path. The tree of life remains, but it cannot be reached. Not because humanity is unworthy, but because humanity is now aware, and awareness changes everything. The Hebrew scriptures never say Eden was destroyed, only hidden, guarded, inaccessible. It still exists somewhere, and from that point on, the story of the Hebrew people is one of return, not to Eden's soil, but to its state, a journey of repair, of healing, of remembrance. In their prayers, Eden is a future promise. In the Psalms, the land yearns to be made whole again. In the prophets, a new garden blooms in visions, a garden where the lion lies with the lamb, where swords become plowshares, where sorrow is no more. Eden reborn, but always it is just out of reach, just beyond the veil. In the mystical writings of the Kabbalists, Eden is not one place, but 2. There is the lower Eden Gan, Eden Hat, and there is the higher Eden Gan, Eden Helian, the divine realm, the soul's resting place. The lower Eden was lost, the higher Eden remains. And the righteous, they say, will dwell there after death, among the trees of light and the rivers of peace. But even in life, the mystics sought to touch Eden. Through study, through meditation, through the contemplation of the divine name. They believed the garden could be glimpsed in flashes, in stillness, in wonder. One rabbi said, every Sabbath is a taste of Eden, a pause, a return, a remembrance. Another taught that Eden could be entered in dreams, in visions, in the silence between heartbeats. And so we return again to mystery. Eden in Hebrew is not only a place, it is a state of being, a remembrance before forgetting, a breath before exile, a light before shadow. And perhaps, as we trace the sacred letters, as we breathe the rhythm of Genesis, we are not reading about a garden lost, but being invited into a garden remembered. And in that remembering, we draw closer to something beyond history, beyond language, to a paradise that still waits behind the turning sword, behind the veil of now. Let us rest a moment, dear dreamer. The language of Eden is soft. It speaks not in noise, but in stillness. And from this stillness, we will rise again to follow the Guardian's echo into other lands and other dreams. The journey continues now into the lands of sand and silence, into the sweeping deserts where wind writes its own scripture in the dunes, and the sky stretches wide like the gaze of eternity. Here, in the burning breath of the ancient Near East, echoes of Eden still shimmer, like heat rising from distant stone. The Hebrews wandered this land. So did prophets and kings, shepherds and mystics. And though the garden was behind them, sealed unreachable, they spoke of it still. In symbols, in silence, in longing. The desert is not a place of forgetting. It is a place of distillation. In the dryness, truth sharpens. In the emptiness, the soul listens. And in that listening, the memory of paradise lingers. When Adam and Eve left the garden, they entered the wilderness. The word Eden fades, and the word earth begins to rise. Dust, thorns, sweat, mortality. Even in the exile, something of Eden remains, a memory folded into the folds of the soul. Abraham would later wander these same dry lands, guided by stars and promises. Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph carried the garden like a shadow behind their steps. In every altar, in every well dug, in every blessing whispered beneath desert sky, the dream remained to return, not to the east of Eden perhaps, but to the presence of peace, to the garden behind the world. And Moses met the divine not in the garden, but in a flame that did not consume, a bush that burned in the wilderness, a voice from fire and silence. Was that not also Eden, in another form? When the Hebrews received the law at Sinai, the mountain became a kind of Eden set apart, sacred, filled with divine presence. The tabernacle they built mirrored the garden in its design, eastward facing, guarded by cherubim embroidered on its veil, filled with gold and light. Within the Holy of Holies stood the ark resting upon a slab known as the mercy seat, flanked by 2 golden cherubim. It was not the tree of life, but it was a symbol of the same mystery, presence dwelling. The cherubim appear again, as they guarded Eden's gate, so they now guard the place where the divine presence rests, not to keep humans away, but to remind them of what was once lost and what may yet be restored. Later, when the temple was built in Jerusalem, it too echoed Eden. The inner sanctum was a garden of symbolism, cedar walls, carved with palm trees and flowers, overlaid with gold. The imagery was deliberate. This was a return to the garden, not through geography, but through holiness. The prophets remembered Eden not as myth, but as promise. Isaiah speaks of deserts blooming, of wilderness becoming fertile ground. The Lord will comfort Zion, he writes. He will make her deserts like Eden, her wastelands like the garden of the Lord. Ezekiel, too, remembers the garden. He mourns its loss in parables. He describes the king of Tyre as a figure who once walked in Eden, adorned with every precious stone. He fell, not by fate, but by pride. The fall repeats, even in mourning. The memory of Eden shapes the vision of what can be. And in a Song of Songs, a love poem sung beneath moonlight, the garden appears again, as metaphor, as desire. A garden enclosed is my sister, my bride. The fragrance of pomegranates, the drip of honey from lips, the rustle of lilies in the breeze. Eden here is not theology. It is intimacy, beauty, longing, made flesh. Perhaps, the Hebrew sages suggest, Eden is not a place we fell from, but a reality we veil, a realm hidden by our own fear, shame, or forgetfulness. The Talmud speaks of 70 meanings to every verse in Torah, and perhaps Eden too has 70 doors. Each culture, each seeker, finds a different way in. The mystics believed Eden could be approached through meditation, through the alignment of thought, speech, and deed, through compassion, through silence. Some claimed that when one studies Torah for its own sake, even for a moment, the gates of Eden open slightly. The soul sees and remembers. There is a Hasidic tale of a tzaddik, righteous one who, upon reaching a certain depth in prayer, would be surrounded by the scent of apples. Not real apples, but the apples of Eden. The air would grow sweet. The heart would still, and for a moment, the exhale would lift. The scent of paradise. Invisible, yet unmistakable. Even the rabbis, in their commentaries, spoke of Eden not just as a place before time, but as a realm beyond time, a spiritual reality, glimpsed only by the pure in heart. In their writings, the soul comes from Eden and returns to Eden. Life, then, is a journey of remembering, and in that remembering, something heals. So we walk the desert not as a punishment, but as a path. The wilderness becomes a teacher. It strips away illusion. It whispers truth. And when the stars come out and the winds grow still, we remember, not in sight, not in sound, but in silence. And sometimes that is enough, for Eden does not shout. It waits. It does not argue, it calls. And in the dry places, in the open spaces, in the uncluttered soul, the call can be heard, not with ears but with longing. The Hebrews knew this. They remembered the garden, not in certainty, but in story. And in that story, we find ourselves still walking, still hoping, still turning our faces eastward, where the light once shone between the trees. Let us rest now, for even in deserts, gardens bloom in dreams, and soon we will rise again, to follow Eden's trail into other tongues and deeper mysteries. Now, dear traveler of dreams, Let us pass through another threshold, one lined not with parchment nor with clay, but with the sacred resonance of recitation. Let us journey into the heart of the Quran, where Eden is spoken not in memory, but in presence, not in past tense, but as eternal truth. In Arabic, it is not simply called Eden, it is the garden, a word that means not only a garden, but something hidden, enclosed, veiled, a place of both beauty and mystery. The root of Jannah is Jahanan, to cover, to conceal, to be hidden from sight. It is the same root for jinn, those unseen beings of flame and shadow. It is also the root for yangin, the word for a fetus nestled within the womb. And so we begin to understand, Eden in the Quranic imagination is not merely a garden of pleasure, it is a sacred enclosure, a mystery, a realm concealed from the eyes of the world, yet ever present in the breath of divine remembrance. In the Quran, the garden is not a relic of ancient loss, it is an ever-living realm. It is the origin and the destination. Surah Al-Baqarah recounts how Adam and his wife were placed in a garden by their Lord. They were told to dwell therein in peace, to eat freely of its bounty, but not to approach a certain tree, not unlike the Genesis tale. And yet, the tones shift. There is no mention of the tree of knowledge, no direct labeling of good and evil, only the tree. They forbidden. When they eat, their shame awakens. Their bodies are revealed to them. They seek to cover themselves with leaves from the garden, but there is no divine wrath, only a gentle redirection. Then their Lord called to them, saying, "Did I not forbid you from that tree and say to you that Satan is your sworn enemy?" And they reply with repentance, "Our Lord, we have wronged ourselves. If you do not forgive us and have mercy upon us, we will surely be among the losers." This is no tale of condemnation. It is a moment of realization, of return, of mercy. Adam is not cast out in punishment, but sent forth in purpose. Descend, all of you, as enemies to one another, and upon the earth will be a dwelling place for you, and provision for a time. The Quranic Eden, then, is not lost. It is set aside, and the earth becomes not a curse, but a station, a temporary abode, a testing ground for the soul's return. Throughout the Quran, the garden is evoked not just as the past, but as the future, the reward, the hidden destination of those who walk the path of remembrance. It is described in flowing language gardens, beneath which rivers flow, of shade unbroken, fruits within reach, garments of silk, and companions of serenity. There is no death, no sorrow, no pain. But beyond the imagery is the feeling, peace, salam. It is not merely the beauty of Jannah that matters, but the presence of divine tranquility. They will not hear therein any ill speech, only greetings of peace. The Quranic garden is not only a paradise of senses, it is a return to nearness, to intimacy with the divine. In some verses, the garden is described as having multiple levels. Dirat, the deeper the serenity. There is even mention of Jannat al-Firdus, the highest garden, the most sublime. It is said that the throne of the most merciful casts its shadow there. Is this the hidden Eden? The scholars debated this. Some believed that the garden Adam dwelled in was a heavenly paradise, high above the world. Others said it was unearthed in a realm between, a sacred zone. Still others said the question is not where, but how. How do we return? And in that question, the Quran offers an answer. Not through conquest, not through control, but through remembrance. To remember not only the name of God, but the garden from which we came, the peace we once knew, the nearness we once felt. In the Quran, Satan does not trick humanity with violence. He whispers, he makes what is false appear fair. He invites forgetfulness. To forget the garden is to fall, but to remember is to rise. There are verses that speak of those who will say, on the day of judgment, our Lord, return us, that we may do righteous deeds. We see now, we remember, but remembrance, the Quran says, begins now. In every breath, in every act of kindness, in every turning away from vanity and toward meaning. The garden is not unlocked by force, but by gentleness. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, there is a piece of flesh in the body, which if sound, the whole body is sound, and if corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. Truly it is the heart, and it is the heart, too, that remembers Eden, not through maps, not through excavation, but through the soft light of the inner soul. In Islamic tradition, paradise is entered not with deeds alone, but with mercy, not earned, but gifted. And when the soul enters, it does not find a new place, it finds home. The Prophet once said, in paradise, there are things no eye has seen, no eye has heard, and no heart has imagined. And so Eden remains unseen, unheard, unimaginable, but deeply known. We carry it in our sleep, in our sighs, in our longing for peace. The Quran does not speak of Eden with finality. It speaks in circles, repetition, echo, return, so that each recitation is a step back toward the garden, and every whisper of the soul is a leaf rustling in Jannah, Perhaps the garden is closer than we think. Perhaps it never left. Only we forgot. Let us remember now. And as we drift from the words of the Quran into the dream fields of interpretation, we will find that mystics across all traditions, Sufi, Christian, Jewish, and beyond Tao, sought the same gate. The gate of remembrance, the threshold of peace. Let us step toward it. Together, beneath the surface of sacred text, beneath the outer words and rituals, there flows a current. Subtle, fluid, ancient. It is the path of the mystic, the lover of the divine. And among those seekers, the Sufis hold a lantern, casting quiet light into the soul's deepest longing. They speak not of but of the beloved, not of distance, but of and in their songs, their silences, and their dances, they seek the garden, not as a place but as a state, a fragrance, a memory. To the Sufi, Eden is not a lost paradise in the past. It is the heart's forgotten homeland, the place from which the soul came, and to which it longs to return. The 13th century mystic Jalal ad-Din Rumi once wrote, "We are all returning to the place where the soul first took flight, to the meadow of eternity, where flowers know no withering, is Eden. This longing is the whisper of paradise." The Sufi path begins not with exile, but with separation. The soul is seen as having descended from the realm of pure light, Jannah al-Haqiqah, the garden of truth. It entered the body, forgetting its origin, but traces remain. Hint: this forgetfulness is not a punishment. It is a necessary veil to make the journey meaningful. The heart is the compass, the breath is the gate, and remembrance sticker is the key. In their gatherings, Sufis recite the names of the divine again and again. They spin in circular dances called sama, imitating the turning of the planets, the rotation of the soul around its source. The rhythm is slow, then fast, then still. Through motion, stillness is reached. Through sound, silence is unveiled. Through repetition, meaning dissolves and reappears like stars behind clouds. In that state, the garden unfolds within the... It is said that when a Sufi reaches a certain station of nearness, they feel a scent of sweetness in the air. Some say it is musk, others say it is the fragrance of the trees of paradise, a scent remembered from before time. To the mystic, this scent is real, not metaphor, not poetry. It is the breath of Eden. Sufi texts speak of the 7 valleys the soul must cross to return to the beloved. The valley of search, the valley of love, the valley of knowledge, the valley of detachment, the valley of unity, the valley of wonderment, and finally, the valley of annihilation. In the last valley, the self dissolves, the ego fades, only the beloved remains. And there, in that absence, the garden reappears. This garden is not filled with trees or rivers. It is filled with peace. Salam Rumi speaks again. I am the drop that contains the sea. I am the hidden Eden, awaiting only remembrance. To remember, in the Sufi sense, is not to recall a fact. It is to rejoin. The Quran says, know that in the remembrance of God, hearts find rest. This rest is the soil of paradise. The Sufi poets often describe the beloved as a gardener, tending the soul like a vine, pruning it, watering it, waiting for its bloom. But the soul must surrender. It must stop striving outward and fall inward. For the Sufis teach that Eden is not at the end of time, but in the space between thoughts, in the breath between grief and joy, in the silence before a name is spoken. In that space, the garden stirs, and the path is not walked with feet. It is wept with longing. Sufi saints like Rabi of Busra spoke of Eden with simplicity. She did not seek paradise for its pleasures, nor fear hell for its torments. She loved the divine for the divine alone. Even if there were no garden, no flame, she said, still I would serve you, O Lord, for you are my only desire. In this, we understand. The garden is not a reward. It is a reflection of the soul aligned, of the heart opened, of the self-forgotten. The 11th century mystic Al-Ghazali wrote of the mirror of the heart that, when polished, it reflects the divine light. When covered in dust, the reflection fades, but with remembrance, it returns. And in that reflection is Eden, not remembered, not imagined, but known intimately, wordlessly. Some Sufi orders teach that paradise lies not after death, but within Marifa, the knowledge of the real, and that those who see truly walk through the world already in the garden. They greet each moment with peace, each soul with gentleness, each breath with gratitude, and the gate remains open to them, silent, radiant, unseen by the eyes, but felt by the soul. There is a saying among Sufis, the way to paradise is through the heart of another. For when you ease the suffering of one, you walk through the garden's gate. And so, dear dreamer, perhaps Eden is not sealed by cherubim, nor guarded by fire. Perhaps it is opened by compassion and remembered through love. As we breathe now, in the stillness of night, we might feel its edge, a brush of leaves, a scent of unseen blossoms, a peace rising like dew from within. Let us pause, and let that stillness bloom. For, in this silence, the garden lives. As twilight settles upon the fields of spiritual memory, we now follow the soft tolling of distant bells, through chapels and cathedrals, across the silent cloisters of monastic gardens, into the Christian remembrance of Eden, our story not only of origin but of redemption. The Garden of Eden is central in Christian thought, yet its meaning shifts like the light through stained glass. It is not merely the place from which humanity fell, but the key to understanding what it means to rise. The book of Genesis, shared with the Hebrew tradition, describes Eden as the cradle of creation. Yet in Christian theology, that garden becomes a mirror, a backdrop, a holy paradox. In Eden, humanity begins, and in the New Testament, humanity begins again. The tree of knowledge becomes a symbol of disobedience. The expulsion from Eden becomes a symbol of exile. And yet, Christian mystics and scholars alike have never ceased to ask, what was truly lost, and what, if anything, can be found again? The early church fathers, from Augustine to Origen, wrote deeply about the garden not as a physical place, but as a spiritual reality. To Augustine, Eden was the symbol of original innocence. Its loss marked not only the fall of man, but the fracture of harmony between creation and creator. Yet even in his sorrowful reflections, there is a seed of hope. Augustine writes, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." That rest is the echo of Eden. To the Christian, contemplative Eden is not merely a memory, it is a prophecy. The tree at the center of Eden finds its mirror in another tree. The cross, what was once the source of exile, now becomes the gate of return. In the Gospels, Jesus dies upon a wooden beam. In early Christian poetry, this becomes a reversal of the fall. The tree that once brought death now brings life. The cross becomes the new tree of life, not adorned with fruit, but with forgiveness. In the Gospel of Luke, as Jesus hangs upon that cross, a thief beside him whispers a plea, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom," and Jesus replies, "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Paradise is Greek word drawn from the Old Persian, meaning walled garden. A return, not to myth, but to presence, not in some far-off future, but today. The early Christians saw the life of Christ as a great circle, from garden to garden, from Eden to Gethsemane. In Eden, in Gethsemane, Jesus surrenders, "Not my will, but yours." The fall begins with a tree. The redemption, too. In the mystical writings of the Desert Fathers, Christian monks who fled to the Egyptian wilderness to seek the divine, the garden was not a place to recover through force or reason, but through stillness. One said, "Sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you all things." In that stillness, they cultivated the inner Eden. Silence became their soil, prayer their river, humility their tree. And in that secret garden of the soul, they believed they could walk once more with God in the cool of the evening. Later mystics, like Meister Eckhart, spoke of Eden not as past, but as now. "The eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me," he said. "My soul is not outside Eden. It is Eden when it forgets itself." In Christian iconography, paradise is sometimes depicted as a walled garden, a hortus conclusus, where Mary, the Theotokos, the Mother of God, is found among roses and lilies. She becomes the new Eve, and the garden becomes a symbol not of loss, but of life. In the book of Revelation, the final text of the Christian Bible, the garden returns once more. At the end of time, in the New Jerusalem, a river flows from the throne of God. On either side of it stands the tree of life. Its leaves are for the healing of the nations. The circle closes. The gate reopens. Eden is not merely restored, it is transformed. The theologian Gregory of Nyssa wrote that Eden was not a static place, but a starting point. That humanity was created not perfect, but capable of perfection. The fall was not the end, but the beginning of the journey toward divine union. And that journey continues now, in the soul of every seeker. For many Christian contemplatives, the path back to Eden is not marked by law, but by love. To love God, to love one's neighbor, to return to simplicity. St. Francis of Assisi walked barefoot through forest and fields, calling every creature his sibling. He saw in every sparrow a trace of Eden, in every flower a forgotten whisper. To Francis, Eden was not far. It sang in the brook, it shimmered in the dew, it lingered in the breath of peace between one step and the next. And in the Christian sacrament of Eucharist, the breaking of bread, the drinking of wine, believers taste a sacred memory, not only of a Last Supper, but of a first garden, the fruit of the vine, the bread of life. A reminder that paradise is not just what we long for, it is what we become when we are gathered in love. The Gospel of John begins not with the birth of Jesus, but with a mystery. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, a new Genesis, a new creation. And in its heart, the same longing to walk again with the divine, to be known and unashamed, to return not backward, but inward. And so, for the Christian mystic, Eden is not locked behind a sword. It is held open by grace, by the soft hands of mercy, by the breath of forgiveness. It is entered not through striving, but through surrender, not by claiming, but by letting go. And in that letting go, we find it the tree, the river, the silence, the presence, the peace today. You will be with me in paradise. Perhaps that promise was not only for a thief, but for us all. In this moment, in this breath, let us pause and listen. The garden is near. Now, dreamer, let us turn our gaze from sacred text to sacred terrain, from scripture to soil, from poetry to place. For though Eden has been sung of in verses and sought in visions, there are those who have searched for it in dust and riverbed, in satellite and map. The lost geography of Eden is a riddle that has echoed through the ages, a puzzle with no edge, and a center that moves with each new theory. The book of Genesis tells us Eden was planted eastward. It describes a garden from which flowed a single river, dividing into 4 great branches: Piscean, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Perath. The last 2 are familiar. Hiddekel is often identified with the Tigris. Perath is the Euphrates. Both rivers still flow, though their courses have shifted with time and empire. But Piscean and Gihon remain elusive, mysterious, as if they flowed not only through land, but through myth. Still, seekers have tried to find them. Some say Piscean once flowed through the Arabian Peninsula, near the land of Havilah, where there is gold. Satellite imagery has revealed dry channels beneath the Sandasian riverbeds, now called Wadi Albert. Was this once the Piscean winding through a lush land that is now dust and mirage? Others propose that Gihon encircled the land of Kush, perhaps Nubia, in ancient Africa. Might it have been a branch of the Nile, or a long-vanished river that once curled like a serpent through Ethiopia? Each theory offers a new compass bearing, yet the destination slips away. The rivers of Eden are not merely directions. They are thresholds, symbols, veins of memory running through the body of the world. In the 4th century, Saint Jerome translated the Bible into Latin. He was among the first to suggest that Eden was situated on a mountaintop. He imagined a sacred elevation, from which rivers could descend in every direction, symbolizing divine abundance flowing into the world. Later, Christian scholars adopted the idea that Eden was at the navel of the world, the perfect center. Some medieval maps even marked it so. In the Mappa Mundi, Eden is depicted at the top, encircled by walls of flame, beyond the known world, untouchable, yet central. Other voices claimed it lay near the headwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates, perhaps in Armenia, or the highlands of eastern Turkey. Some place it in Iran, others in Iraq. Some trace its rivers to ancient Sumer, where cities like Eridu and Ur rose along marshy banks. Could these have been the lands that once cradled the garden? Yet even as archaeologists dig and scholars debate, the terrain changes. Rivers dry, floodplains shift, civilizations vanish, and Eden moves again. There are legends that say Eden was destroyed and the flood swept away by divine waters, sealed beneath the deep. Others claim it was never meant to remain on earth, that once innocence was lost, the garden was taken up, veiled beyond reach. And still, we search. Modern technology has joined the quest. In recent decades, satellite imagery has revealed traces of long-lost rivers across the Middle East, ghostly lines of former flow. Hydrologists and historians have worked together, tracing what may be the buried paths of Eden's streams. Some look to the Persian Gulf, where the Tigris and Euphrates meet the sea. Here ancient myths speak of Dilmun, the land of purity, located near Bar. Could the garden have once flourished on the shores of this shallow sea? Others propose that the original river of Eden was a symbolic source flowing not only into rivers of water, but rivers of time, spirit, and meaning. A single source, dividing into 4 paths. 4 is a sacred number in many traditions. 4 directions, 4 winds, 4 elements, 4 gospels. The rivers, then, may be the streams of divine presence flowing into the world's corners. A map not of land, but of the soul. The geography is of Eden, like its story, shifts as we draw near. For every time we think we have found its soil, it opens into symbol. There are even those who believe Eden was not on earth at all, but in another realm unparalleled, accessible only through spiritual ascent. In Kabbalistic tradition, Eden exists in the world of Berea, the world of creation. It is not physical, but luminous, a reality of form and purpose, beyond our grasp, yet shaping all below. In Islamic cosmology, Eden is part of the unseen world, the Geba dimension folded within ours, invisible to eyes, but present in prayer. Perhaps Eden has never been lost. Perhaps it was never findable by spade or satellite, because it lives in the folds of meaning, not the folds of the map. And yet, the human longing persists, to find the gate, to walk its shaded paths, to hear the rustle of its trees, and feel the breeze that once danced between immortality and breath. In the 17th century, explorers carried maps with Eden marked upon them. Some believed it lay in the Americas, hidden in jungle or a mountain, beyond the rivers of gold. Others sought it in the East Indies, the Pacific, the poles, a paradise always elsewhere. Always almost. Always almost. Always almost remembered. This longing, this sacred ache is not foolishness. It is the compass of the soul. Eden may not be found, but in seeking it, we find ourselves. We discover the paths we still walk, the rivers we still follow, the trees we still yearn to touch, not because they are lost, but because they are eternal. In us, all around us, and perhaps beneath us is sleeping, waiting. Let us rest here now, at the edge of ancient waters, where the river bends just beyond sight, where memory and earth become one. The garden is not gone, it is veiled, and we are drawing near. In every age, and upon every tongue, the story of Eden whispers. It has crossed oceans, climbed mountains, and wandered deserts, not as a tale chain to one book, but as a current deep beneath human thought. A myth, yes, but a myth that breathes, one that shapes the soul of the world. Joseph Campbell, the 20th century mythologist, called Eden one of the great archetypes, not because it is fiction, but because it is truth told through symbol, a mirror to the inner journey of every human life. In the language of myth, the garden is not a static past, but a pattern, a place of origin, a moment of harmony, and then something breaks, the fall, and with it, the longing begins. This pattern is found across civilizations. In the Hopi traditions of North America, there is a memory of a first world pure and balanced left behind when humanity began to act out of harmony. The world cracked, and they moved on, to begin again. In Zoroastrian cosmology, there is a tale of a perfect creation corrupted by deception of light and order, disrupted by darkness and confusion. The earth is not forsaken, but challenged, and the journey becomes one of restoration. Even in Chinese Taoist thought, there is the sense of a lost natural order, wu wei the, effortless flow with the Tao. It is not called Eden, but it too is a garden, a way of being before striving, before fragmentation. And in the mythologies of ancient Polynesia, the beginning of the world is often a garden isle, or a skyland of eternal plenty, from which humankind descends or is banished once a desire awakens. This repeating rhythm, the paradise before knowledge, the loss, the longing may not be coincidence. It may be a memory etched not in history, but in the very architecture of human consciousness. Psychologists speak of childhood as our personal Eden, a time before shame, before complexity, before the awareness of death. The fall, then, is not only in scripture, but in each soul's awakening. The first moment we knew we would one day be gone, the first time we were told no. The garden closes, but we spend the rest of our lives walking the border, trying to return. Artists have painted it, poets have wept for it, philosophers have debated it, and the mystics have tried to enter it. In Dante's Divine Comedy, after descending into hell and climbing the terraces of purgatory, the poet arrives at the top of a sacred mountain. There, he finds Eden, the earthly paradise, still there, still blooming, hidden but real. He passes through it, not as a reward but as preparation. The garden is not the end. It is the gate to heaven. And in Milton's Paradise Lost, Eden is a place of majestic beauty, but also of tension. He explores the fall not as a moment of divine punishment, but of human choice, of curiosity, of will. And even as the gates of Eden close at the end of the poem, the final lines point outward toward a new journey with the world, all before them, a new Eden to seek. And in Tolkien's Legendarium, echoes of Eden return again in the land of Valinor, the undying lands to the west, filled with trees of light and shores untouched by time, a paradise reached only by the few, and only after great loss. In each of these myths, the garden is never truly destroyed. It is hidden, or transformed, or placed beyond reach, not as. And perhaps, to remember, even in secular culture, the myth remains. We speak of paradise lost in war, in love, in innocence. We call moments Edenic, when they are simple, whole, untouched. We sense it in music, in certain chords, certain voices, certain silences between notes. There is something that stirs, a breeze of memory not of this world, and we turn our faces toward it. We build gardens in cities. We preserve forests. We look at the stars and wonder if paradise lies on another world, and always we are dreaming. The myth of Eden is not a cage. It is a compass. It points inward, yes, but also forward. It reminds us of what harmony feels like, and of how far we have come, and of how much can still be healed. Perhaps this is why the story persists, not because it once was, but because it still is. Each day we choose, each act of kindness, each time we forgive, each time we return to simplicity, silence, and breath, we walk one step closer, not to the garden we left, but to the one we can become. So let us walk gently. Let us carry the myth like a lantern, not to explain, but to illuminate. Let us plant our own gardens in word, in deed, in stillness, and in doing so, perhaps the old Eden, the hidden Eden, will bloom again. Now, dear listener of shadows and seeker of the green stillness. Let us return to the gate, the eastern gate, the one veiled by flame and wings, for it is there, at the edge of the known, that the garden's final image in Genesis lingers not in peace, but in mystery. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to guard the way to the tree of life. It is a single verse, yet infinite in depth. Why cherubim? Why fire? Why this turning sword? And what truly does it mean to guard the way to the tree? Not to destroy it, not to erase it, but to guard it. In the ancient world, cherubim were not plump children with golden curls. They were fierce and radiant beings, holy sentinels depicted with wings of many hues, faces of lion and eagle, man and ox, symbols of divine presence, of liminal beings who stood at the threshold between heaven and earth. They are not executioners, they are watchers. They do not chase humanity from the garden, they keep the way hidden, preserved, sacred in the sword. It turns every way, it is not aimed, it moves of its own will. It may not be a weapon at all, but a fire that purifies, that forbids the unready, but calls to those who remember how to see. Many ancient commentators did not see the expulsion from Eden as a punishment, but as a necessity, not an end but a beginning of the human journey into responsibility, awareness, love, and the long path of return. The cherubim, then, are not to be feared. They are reminders that some gates open not through force, but through reverence, that some paths are walked not with feet, but with silence. In the tabernacle of the ancient Israelites, cherubim were carved over the mercy seat, the ark's cover, facing each other with wings outstretched. Between them dwelt the Shekinah, the presence of the divine, the same pattern. The cherubim at Eden's gate were not the last we would see. They reappear wherever the sacred touches the world, in visions, in dreams, in art. Perhaps they dwell at the border of every mystery, their wings brushing between the visible and the unseen. In some mystical traditions, the sword of fire does not burn flesh, it burns illusion. It turns every way, not to repel, but to awaken. To approach it is to be transformed. To stand at the gate is to be undone, not destroyed, but remade. So often we imagine that we are cast out of the garden, but perhaps the garden was folded inward, veiled not by wrath, but by light, too great for unready eyes. And the way back, it is guarded, not because we are unworthy, but because it is holy, and holiness asks of us. The same thing Eden asked of Adam and Eve: presence, listening, stillness. A sword that turns every way might be the turning of the heart, the mind, the soul. When it turns toward kindness, the flame softens. When it turns toward wonder, the wings lift. When it turns toward love, the way opens. Some have said the gate is in the east, but others say it is in the breath, that each inhale is the tree of life, each exhale the fall, and between them, the gate. We stand before it in every moment of awareness, every time we choose gentleness over pride, every time we step back from noise into stillness, every time we remember the taste of silence. That is the gate. And the cherubim, they are not there to banish us. They are there to welcome us home. Once we are ready to enter, not as children of dust, but as dreamers who have remembered their name. So do not fear the flame, let it purify. Do not run from the wings, let them shade you. And do not despair that Eden is far. The sword may turn every way, but your heart knows the path. Close your eyes. Listen, the garden is near, and the gate is not locked, only veiled. We will walk softly, dreamer, into the light beyond the veil. There is more to see, more to remember. Let us continue. Let us return now, not to the gate, nor to the rivers, but to the center, to the heart of the garden, to the tree of life. So often the stories dwell on its twin, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, with its forbidden fruit, its shadowed allure. But beneath that drama lies another mystery, quieter and deeper. The tree of life is rarely described, its fruit is not named, its shape is not drawn, but it stands in the center, patient, undisturbed, waiting. In Genesis, it is not this tree from which Adam and Eve first eat. It is not forbidden, not at first. It is simply there. But once the knowledge is tasted, once the fall begins, the tree of life is suddenly guarded, the gate is sealed, and its branches become unreachable. Why? What does it mean to eat of life, to live forever, and why, after the fall, must this tree be hidden? The text offers no answers, only silence, only symbols. And so the mystics and seekers have wondered, dreamed, listened. In the tradition of the Kabbalah, the tree of life is not botanical, it is mystical. A divine map of reality itself. It consists of 10 emanations, Sephiro, each a window into the divine. Keter, the crown, Chokmah, wisdom. And on it flows, through beauty and mercy, strength and humility, down to Malkuth, the kingdom. This tree is not of wood and bark, but of light and spirit. It connects heaven to earth. It reflects the soul's own pattern, to ascend, the tree is to return to the source. The Kabbalists believed that in the beginning, light flowed into the world, but the vessels were too fragile to contain it. They shattered. This shattering, this shever et hocalim, echoes the fall, but the light remains, hidden in the fragments. And our task, to lift the sparks, to repair the broken, to climb slowly back through the branches, to the crown, to life. In Christian imagery, the tree of life returns in the final pages of the Bible. In the book of Revelation, a river flows from the throne of God and the Lamb, and on either side stands the tree of life. Its leaves, we are told, are for the healing of the nations. Its fruit, ever-bearing, and the gates of the city never close. The tree appears again, not as memory, as promise, as return. And in Islamic tradition, there is also a tree, the Sidrat al-Muntaha, the low tree of the utmost boundary. It stands at the edge of all creation, beyond which none may pass but the divine. The Prophet Muhammad is said to have reached it in his night journey, when he ascended through the heavens. There, the tree is adorned with indescribable beauty, its shade vast, its presence overwhelming. A limit and a threshold, the echoes are there. The sacred tree, the center. Even in Eastern traditions, the sacred tree appears. In Buddhism, it is the Bodhi tree beneath which the Buddha sat and attained enlightenment, a tree of awakening, of remembrance. In Norse mythology, it is Yggdrasil, world tree whose branches bind the heavens, earth, and underworld, a tree that connects all. In each, the tree is not merely life, it is unity, a reminder of what was and what can be. Perhaps this is why the tree of life is hidden after the fall, not to punish, but to preserve, until we are ready, until we have seen both good and evil, and chosen love, until we have fallen and risen again, until we no longer seek the tree for ourselves alone, but for the healing of all. Then, perhaps, the sword no longer turns. The cherubim step aside and the garden opens, not backward, but inward. The tree, then, is not only in Eden, it is in every moment of kindness, every breath of awe, every act of it stands wherever life is on it, where truth is tended, where silence blooms. And sometimes, if we are still enough, we may feel its roots beneath our feet, or taste its fruit in the peace between heartbeats, or see its branches stretch across the stars. The tree of life is not lost. It is veiled, but it is near, and its leaves are still falling softly, waiting to be lifted. Let us rest beneath it now, in thought, in breath, in reverence, for the journey continues, and the light still calls. Now, dreamer, let us wander not in soil or scripture, but in the drifting space where waking thought dissolves, and the soft breath of dreams begins. For Edom is not only remembered in tales or theology, it is dreamed across centuries, across cultures. Human beings have dreamt of a garden, a place beyond fear, a place of wholeness, of light filtered through ancient leaves, of flowing water without end, of a presence felt in the rustling of grass and the golden hush of stillness. It is there in the dreams of children, an unspoiled world where nothing needs to be earned, only received. It is there in the final sighs of the aged, who recall a time long past when life felt simple, full, and soft. And it is there, too, in the dreams of poets and seers, who, even in a broken world, close their eyes and walk among invisible trees. The philosopher Plato once wrote of a realm of perfect forms, a place where everything in this world has its truer, purer counterpart. A world beyond this one, more real than what we call real. Was this a garden? A place where the soul remembers what the body forgets? Carl Jung, the modern dreamer of dreams, saw Eden not as a story of the past, but as a symbol from the collective unconscious, a primordial image. To Jung, the garden is the self-unified whole, unbroken. The exile is not from land, but from inner harmony, and the return is the work of a lifetime. In dreams, the garden takes many forms. For some, it is a forest where no path is needed. For others, it is a home, not of walls, but of presence. For others still, it is light, feeling and knowing. Have you, dear dreamer, walked there? Have you stood beneath unfamiliar stars and known without knowing how that you were safe, that you had returned, even for a moment, even if only in sleep? Some mystics believe that dreams are not shadows, but visits, that when we dream of the garden, it is not imagination, it is memory. The Sufis speak of the Alam al-Mithil, the imaginal world, a realm between waking and the divine, a place where visions are real, where the soul travels in sleep, touching truths too bright for day, and the garden is there. In Christian mysticism, too, dreams are gates. Many saints recorded visions of the garden not as reward, but as invitation, a reminder that the world behind the veil is close. There are stories, soft ones, of people near death who speak of trees they have never seen, rivers with no source, a fragrance that makes them weep. These are not hallucinations. They are glimpses of Eden. And the garden comes not only to the dying. Sometimes it comes to the grieving, the lost, the seekers. There are countless tales of people who, in their sorrow, dream of a place where nothing hurts, where those who are lost are whole again. They wake with tears, but also with peace. The garden is generous in that way. It visits when needed. It reminds without speaking. It offers what cannot be named. In some traditions, dreams are sacred texts, not illusions, messages. And if that is so, then Eden speaks, not in words, but in images that press gently on the soul. A grove of trees, a sky without sun or moon, a light that warms without burning, a voice not heard but felt, saying, "You are not far. You never were." Perhaps this is why so many spend their lives searching, because once, in sleep, they walked among its shadows, and they remember, not with the mind, with something deeper. When ancient prophets spoke of Eden, they did not always point outward. They closed their eyes and listened. And we can do the same, for the dream of the garden is planted in each of us, and like all living things, it yearns to grow, to bloom, to be touched again. So rest now, gentle soul. Let the veil of the world grow thin. Let memory rise through the silence. You may dream of a river, or a grove, or a light, or perhaps only peace. Whatever form it takes, know this: the garden has not forgotten you. It remembers, and in your dreams, it waits. We have searched the maps. We have listened to the scriptures. We have walked the silent corridors of myth and dream. And yet, always, Eden seems just beyond reach. But what if it has been within us all along? Many spiritual traditions teach that paradise is not a place to be found, but a state to be uncovered, not a reward for the afterlife, but a truth buried in this one. This, dear dreamer, is the Eden within. In the teachings of early Christian mystics, the fall of humanity was not simply from a garden but from awareness. The mind was scattered, the soul forgot its origin, and in that forgetting, suffering began. But through contemplation, through prayer, through stillness, the veil could lift, the memory could return, the heart could bloom again. Saint Isaac the Syrian wrote, "Paradise is the love of God, in which is all joy." He taught that Eden is not a garden of trees but the place where love is undivided, where all fear dissolves. And so, to love without condition, to see the divine in every face, is to step once more through the garden's gate. The desert fathers of Egypt taught this too. In solitude, they discovered that paradise is not where you go, it is where you stop fleeing from yourself. They called it Isiki, holy stillness. In the depth of that stillness, something opens, and there, in the silence, the tree stands. The Sufi poets also speak of this. Rumi says, "You wander from room to room, looking for the diamond necklace that is already around your neck." To search for Eden outside, he says, is to chase shadows, but to pause, to breathe, to turn inward. That is where the river flows. In the teachings of the Buddha, suffering arises from craving, from forgetting the present moment, from grasping at illusions. But in mindfulness, in simple awareness, there is the garden, each breath returning, each step gentle. In Taoist philosophy, the way is found not by effort, but by yielding. Where effortless action arises when one is in harmony with the flow of the universe, and when that flow is trusted, the garden returns, no longer lost, but unfolding moment by moment. In the Jewish tradition, the Sabbath is a taste of Eden, a time set apart, not to accomplish, but to be, to remember that we are not machines, but souls, that stillness is sacred, that the world, even in its brokenness, can be held with reverence. The Hasidic masters taught that joy is the key to the garden, not the joy of distraction, but the quiet joy of being, to sing, to dance, to weep with love, to sit with a friend in silence. All are gateways, for Eden is not behind us. It is in the kindness we show, the forgiveness we offer, the awe we feel, the tears we shed when beauty touches something long forgotten. Perhaps the serpent was never an enemy, but a mirror. Perhaps the exile was never from a place, but from presence. And perhaps the journey is not to reclaim a garden long lost, but to uncover the one within. One mystic wrote, "The gate to Eden is narrow, not because it is hidden, but because we must become small to enter, small in pride, small in judgment, small enough to pass through the silence." There are people who, after moments of deep meditation, or near death or sudden awakening, report a feeling of perfect peace, of unity, of being held in light. They often say, "I felt like I was home." They cannot describe it fully, but it was real, and when asked what it looked like, they hesitate. "It was like a garden," they sometimes say, "but not of this world." Is that not Eden? The Eden within, the one place no exile can reach, the one truth no lie can bury, the one gate that never closes, only waits. You, dear listener, you carry that garden. It lives behind your breath. It blooms when you pause. It shines in your compassion. Every time you let go of what is false, Eden grows. Every time you forgive, Eden opens. Every time you choose love over fear, the tree of life stirs. Let us sit with that now, not as an idea, but as a presence. Let the world fall away. Let the flame of the sword become the warmth of peace, and let the garden within you remember its own name. And so, beloved dreamer, our path begins to arc like the sun toward its slow setting. Not into darkness, but into quiet, into remembering. We have walked rivers and ruins, scriptures and stars, myths and mystics, and yet the garden remains unseen yet never absent, unfound yet never far. For Eden, above all, is a circle, a spiral, a return, a journey not from beginning to end but from unity to separation, and back again. This too is the rhythm of life: birth, innocence, loss, longing, seeking, finding, and the slow, sacred return to wholeness. The philosopher Messiah Iliad once wrote that myth is a pattern by which the soul orients itself in the chaos of the world, and the myth of Eden may be the oldest of these patterns. We begin in harmony, we lose it, we ache for it, and in that achy we move, we grow, we awaken. Eden is not the start and the end. Eden is the pattern, and the pattern is alive. The ancient Celts spoke of thin places, sacred spaces where the veil between this world and the divine is thinner, softer where eternity brushes against time. In such places, it is said, one might hear the ancient garden rustle, the breath of paradise echoing across the heathered hills. For them, the garden was not once upon a time, it was always just beyond the mist, just behind the wind. And in the Vedic traditions of India, the self-Atman is taught to be one with Brahmandai, eternal reality. The illusion of separation is called Maya. When it lifts, the soul returns not to a place, but to what it always was, home. Could this be Eden? Not a reward, but a recognition. Not a destination, but a dawning. The poet Tagore wrote, "The butterfly counts not months, but moments, and has time enough." And perhaps that is how the garden counts, too, not in miles, but in moments of presence, in the spaces where eternity is felt in the closing of eyes, the parting of lips in prayer, the trembling of the heart when beauty arrives unannounced. And so we ask, does Eden wait at the end of time, or has it always pulsed beneath the surface of things? The Hebrew prophets spoke of a final return, a messianic age, a world remade, where the lion lies with the lamb, where swords become plows, where the earth is filled with knowledge as waters cover the sea, a return not to the past, to the beginning within the end. The Quran speaks of the believers returning to gardens beneath which rivers flow, but not merely after death. Even in life, it says, God calls to the home of peace, an invitation now. The Christian vision, too, is of a new heaven and a new earth, not the erasure of this world, but its transfiguration, a holy city, a river, a tree, the leaves for healing, the gates always open, the garden not regained, but fulfilled, reimagined, enlarged, where once only two walked with the divine, now multitudes sing beneath the branches. All are welcome, all have come home. But let us not wait for the end of days. Let us live as though the gate were open now, as though each act of love plants a seed, each truth spoken clears the path, each injustice undone is a branch healed, and each moment of silence is a step closer to the tree. Because the garden, dreamer, is not in the past or the future. It is in the eternal now. It is not behind you, nor ahead. It is beneath. With and above it is the world regime. It is the self. It is life, loved, holy, quietly, sacredly. We return to Eden, not by running, but by remembering, by slowing, by opening. And when we arrive, we will not find the same garden we left. For we will have changed, we will have grown. We will see not only the light, but the shadows, and love both. Then the gate no longer matters. Then the sword no longer turns. Then the cherubim smile and vanish. And the garden breathes again. In you, in me, in all of us. Welcome home. As the moon rises higher over the ancient canopy of our journey, let us turn now to a voice half heard in the garden, a presence often softened in story, or buried beneath translation. And yet, she was there. She has always been there. In most retellings of Eden, Eve is cast as the catalyst, the one who listened, the one who reached, the one who tasted. And so, the one who fell and led another to fall. But what if this reading is incomplete? What if, within Eve, lies not a fall from grace, but the first spark of awakening? To understand the garden fully, we must understand the feminine not as gender, but as sacred principle, as intuition, receptivity, the moonlit mirror of being. The tree does not bloom without it, nor does the soul return. In Hebrew, the name Ivachava means life, or life-giver. She is not a temptress. She is the mother of all living. Her presence in Eden is not error. It is essence. She walks the garden with eyes open. Where Adam is shaped first, Eve is drawn out from within. She is not made of separate dust, but of shared being. one becomes two, that they may learn unity and love. In many ancient traditions, the feminine was not lesser, but central. In Sumerian myths, the goddess Inanna descends into the underworld to face her shadow, and returns transformed, a journey echoing Eve's descent, revelation. In Gnostic texts, long hidden and later unearthed, Eve is not the origin of sin. She is the one who remembers. In the Apocryphon of John, she is a spirit of light, awakening Adam from his slumber, helping him recognize who he truly is. She does not deceive, she awakens. Could it be that Eve's act to reach for the fruit was not rebellion, but a step toward consciousness, a gesture of holy risk, a movement from innocence into wisdom, from stillness into becoming? There are mystics who say that Eve's choice was not the end of the garden, but its unfolding, that in tasting knowledge, she opened the path of history of tears and triumphs, yes, but also of growth. Without the fruit, there is no journey. Without the journey, no return. And what of the tree itself? It is not said to be evil, only mysterious, a tree of knowledge of good and evil, of polarity, of contrast, and who better to reach for such a truth than one who carries life within her? Eve's fall is often read as weakness. But what if it was courage? What if it was the first step toward knowing fully, deeply the world outside the garden, so that one day it could be loved back into wholeness? The sacred feminine is not always loud. It is the whisper in the wind, the still water of the roots, the hand that reaches, not to take, but to understand. And in every soul, regardless of body, this energy lives, to feel deeply, to nourish, to listen, to know by being, not by proving. Eden is incomplete without it. Not only Eve, but the deeper feminine, the Shekinah in Jewish mysticism, the indwelling presence of the divine. Sophia in Gnostic lore, wisdom made radiant. Mary in Christian thought, the second Eve, bearing new life. Fatima in Islamic tradition, light of the prophet, mother of the pure. All are echoes of a truth too vast to name. The garden is not guarded by wrath. It is guarded by forgetfulness, and the way through may be held in the palm of the feminine, gentle unfolding, full of hidden light. Some say Eve fell, others say she woke. Perhaps both are true, and perhaps our own fallings too are a part of the return. Perhaps each time we stumble, or reach too far, or ache for something unnamed, we are being led back to the garden, but not the same garden. A garden grown wide with wisdom, planted with the seeds of tears and joy and silence, where Eve walks, not in shame, but in radiance, where the serpent no longer deceives, but teaches, and where the fruit, once feared, becomes a gift, not of knowledge alone, but of compassion. So let us honor her now, the one who walked first, and may her steps be heard in our own, as we move through the garden within. And remember that paradise is not only peace, it is wholeness, and it welcomes every part of us, especially the ones once silenced. Now we turn to a figure winding quietly through the undergrowth, a presence half-shadowed, the one who speaks softly beneath the branches and asks not for obedience but for questions. The serpent. In most retellings, the serpent is the villain, the deceiver, the tempter. But as with all symbols, ancient and potent, the serpent wears many skins. It slithers through every culture, not only as destroyer but as guardian of mysteries, as healer, as awake. In Eden, it is the first voice to ask a question. Did God really say? The first to challenge, to push, to open a door that perhaps was meant to remain shut, perhaps to be opened only through the courage of risk. The serpent never forces. It only whispers, and in that whisper, the story changes. But what truly is the serpent? And what is it God? In many ancient traditions, the serpent is a symbol of life itself, of energy moving in spirals, of the earth's ancient wisdom. In Hindu cosmology, the serpent kundalini lies coiled at the base of the spinal latent power that, when awakened, rises through the chakras like a flame climbing the tree of the body. Is this not the tree of life within? And the serpent its guardian? The Greeks saw the serpent as a symbol of healing. The staff of Asclepius, god of medicine, is entwined with a single snake. It is not a sign of poison, but of transformation. Even in the Bible, in a strange and paradoxical moment, Moses lifts a bronze serpent upon a pole, and all who look upon it are healed. The image of the very thing feared becomes the path to wholeness. The serpent is dual. Always it brings death and rebirth, temptation and knowledge, fear and medicine. In the Gnostic Gospels, long buried and long misunderstood, the serpent is not the enemy. It is the one who offers truth. It opens the eyes, and though that opening leads to pain, it also leads to freedom. The Gnostics spoke of Sophia, divine wisdom, as descending into the world, fragmented, scattered, seeking to awaken humanity. Some saw the serpent as her emissary, not to destroy Eden but to invite transformation, to shift humanity from passive innocence to conscious participation. For what is the garden, if never questioned? What is peace, without knowing what it costs? The serpent is the tension between stillness and growth, between harmony and evolution. It is the threshold between the known and the unknown. In Mesoamerican myth, the feathered serpent Quetzal. In Chinese lore, the dragon serpent of the skies, not evil, but wise. Why, then, in Eden, must the serpent bear only shame? Perhaps like Eve, the serpent was not a destroyer, but a mirror. Perhaps it asked the question already in our hearts. Is there more? What lies beyond? And once the question is asked, it cannot be an ask. The fruit is tasted, and the garden, as it was, is no longer. But was this fall? Truly fall? Or was it the beginning of the path? The serpent coils through our stories because it coils through our consciousness. It reminds us that life is not still. It moves, it sheds skin, it spirals upward, it stings and it heals. In many temples of the ancient world, serpents were carved along the lintels and gates, not to repel, to mark the sacred space, to warn here lies mystery. Enter only if you are ready to change. In alchemy, the Ouroboros, a serpent eating its own tails, the oldest symbol of unity, the beginning. The garden, then, may not have been violated. It may have unfolded. The serpent's whisper was not destruction, but evolution. And the exile, not punishment, but passage. Perhaps the serpent knew what was needed, not for Eden to remain untouched, but for Eden to be carried forward, into the world, into time, into each one of us. So let us not fear it. Let us listen, and let us ask, what serpents lie coiled at the roots of our own inner garden? What truths do we avoid for fear of falling? And what might awaken in us? If we dare to taste, let us honor the serpent not as enemy, but as keeper of the threshold, and in doing so, we may reclaim not only the garden, but the courage to walk through it, eyes open, heart soft. Ready? So now we walk, not through Eden itself, but through its echo. For though the gate has closed behind us flames and wings, sealing the way, the garden has not vanished. It has scattered like seeds carried by the wind. It has planted itself in unlikely places, fragments of paradise blooming quietly in the soil of exile. For Eden was never meant to be mourned forever. It was meant to be remembered, and in that remembrance, recreated. Let us walk now through these gardens in exile, moments of wholeness, hidden in a broken world. In ancient Babylon, the hanging gardens were said to rise from terrace stone like a green mountain, a man-made Eden built to comfort a queen far from her homeland. Trees and flowers bloomed among columns. Water trickled from hidden channels. Was this an attempt to reclaim the lost garden? A reminder that even in empire, even in sorrow, beauty could be coaxed into being. In Japan, the Zen garden was crafted not to imitate nature, but to reflect it. Carefully raked stones, sparse plants, an empty space evoke not Eden's abundance but its essence, stillness, balance, attention. These gardens invite contemplation, not indulgence. They are not recreations of paradise, but doorways into inner peace. In medieval Europe, monastic cloisters often featured small enclosed gardens, hoarders. These spaces mirrored the soul. Walled, simple, watched by the divine. Here Eden lived not in fruit or river, but in rhythm, prayer work, stillness. In Islamic tradition, paradise is described as a garden lush, ordered, filled with flowing water. And so, Islamic architecture often included courtyards of symmetry and sound fountains murmuring, trees swaying, a reflection of Jannah here on earth, a reminder, the sacred is not far. It waits beneath jasmine trees and in the trickle of stone-carved water. Even in cities, humans have long sought to plant what was lost. The English word paradise itself comes from an ancient Persian term, a place set apart. But what is it we truly long to enclose? Not just plants, but peace, presence, a space where time slows and the heart can hear itself again. In literature, too, the garden lingers. In Shakespeare's plays, the garden often appears just before order is restored. In Tolkien's Middle-earth is a golden wood untouched by Tim, echo of Eden, shimmering beneath the Malorn trees. And in our own lives, sometimes we glimpse the garden in fleeting moments. In a walk beneath autumn leaves, the hush of snow, the scent of jasmine at dusk. In laughter shared without expectation. In silence held without fear. These are not accidents, they are fragments. The garden in exile, calling to us through beauty, through kindness, through grief. For sorrow is the shadow of love, and every ache we feel is proof that we remember something better, something deeper, something whole. Eden calls to us not only in joy, but in longing. It lives in the art we make, the children we raise, the meals we prepare with care, the dreams we carry in silence, the music that makes us cry for reasons we cannot name. All of it's exile, all of it. Sacred, the garden, though hidden, is never extinguished. It lives in the soil of the human soul, waiting not to be found, to be grown. Each act of compassion is a seed. Each breath of awe is rain. Each word of truth is sunlight. And slowly, through the quiet tending of presence, Eden begins again, not as it was, as it must be, wider, wiser, woven with sorrow and joy. A garden that remembers, that forgives, that welcomes. So walk gently, dreamer, even in exile. The path is green, and every step you take in love is a step back toward the center, the tree, the river, the stillness, the light. Let it grow within you, around you, among us, until one day the garden will not be a story. It will be a world, and we will walk it together. Let us now lean close and listen, not to voices of prophets or scribes, but to the rustling of leaves, to the language of the garden itself. For if Eden is not only a place, but a presence, if it lingers in exile, scattered in beauty, in stillness, in dreams, then surely it still speaks, not in words carved on tablets, but in sounds older than language. Have you ever noticed how trees murmur in the wind, as if remembering? Have you stood in a forest alone and felt not silence, but conversation? The language of leaves is slow. It does not shout, it does not explain, it moves in rhythm, like breath, like waves, like the pulse of something vast. Perhaps it is the voice of Eden itself. The trees in the garden were never named in full. We know the tree of life. We know the tree of knowledge. But what of the others? Were there olives, figs, cedars? Did they bloom all at once, or in sacred sequence? We do not know. But we do know this. Trees remember. Their rings hold time. Their roots remember drought, fire, flood. They stretch without hurry. They speak without sound. They teach without demanding. What might we learn if we listened? In many traditions, trees are more than plants. They are guardians, bridges, beings. In Celtic lore, the Cran Bethurd tree of life stood at the center of each village, connecting heaven, earth, and underworld. The Norse Dresel, too, held all realms within its branches. In Hindu thought, the Ashvatha tree stretches down from the heavens, its roots above, its leaves below. And in Jewish mysticism, the tree of life is not physical, it is a map of divine consciousness. So many trees, so many languages, so many echoes of the garden. Even today, forests hold a power we do not fully understand. Trees communicate underground, through root and fungus sending warnings, sharing nutrients, nurturing the young and the dying. They are not alone, they are community. Like the garden, always interwoven, always whispering. We live in a time of noise, but the garden still calls. In the rustle of a leaf in spring, in the crackle of firewood in winter, in the sudden hush when we step beneath a canopy of green. The language of leaves is one of invitation, too slow to listen, to remember. Even our own breath mirrors the garden inhaler, like the leaves taking in what is unseen, giving back what gives life. Each breath is a leaf, each word a seed, and perhaps each silence is a branch. If you close your eyes now, dreamer, perhaps you'll hear it. The garden, not speaking, but singing, a song with no beginning, only circles, waves, leaves upon leaves upon leaves. Some say that when the wind rustles the trees just so, the veil thins, and if you listen deeply, not with ears, but with soul, you may remember something you never knew you'd forgotten. A fragrance, a feeling, a first word, spoken in light, the language of leaves, the lullaby of Eden, still playing, still waiting. You do not need to understand it, only to hear it, only to sit beneath its shade, only to let it stir something soft and old within you. That is enough, more than enough, for the garden needs no proof, only presence. So listen now, to the hush between thoughts, to the song beyond sound. Let the leaves speak, and may you remember that they always have. Now, dear dreamer, we arrive not at an end, but at a stillness, the hush that settles when all paths have been walked, when all rivers have been traced, when all questions have softened into wonder. We return once more to the garden, not to find it, but to remember that it remembers us. Yes, the Garden of Eden remembers you, though you have wandered, forgotten, fallen, feared. Though you have chased distant stars and stumbled in shadow, though you have long believed the gate was closed forever, still, the garden remembers. It has not accused you, it has not erased you, it has simply waited, with patience older than time, with roots deeper than exile, with love that has never turned away. It remembers your first breath, your first step, your first sorrow, and it remembers the you that was never lost, the soul that still walks in light, the child who once dreamed with eyes wide open, and it holds that image, not in longing, but in welcome. In the Song of Songs, there is a verse, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. He browses among the lilies. This is not only a poem, it is a key. To remember is to be remembered. To turn inward is to be seen. To open your hand is to find another already reaching. The mystics say that when you take one step toward the divine, it takes 1,000 toward you. Perhaps the garden works the same. Perhaps each time we pause, each time we forgive, each time we let beauty break our heart open, A leaf unfurls, a blossom stirs, a path appears. Not ahead, but beneath us. We were always walking it. We simply forgot. There is a story soft, anonymous, passed from lips to heart that tells of a soul who asked the divine, "Why did you send me from paradise?" And the voice replied, "I did not send you out. You turned your gaze away." The gate was never locked. Perhaps the sword that turns every way only turns the eyes of those who would harm, and softens for those who come not to possess, but to behold. Perhaps Eden is not a test, but a teacher, not a memory, but a mirror when we see clearly, when we love truly, when we walk humbly. The garden opens, within, around, and yes, beyond and now as the stars gather above us, and the wind stirs softly in your thoughts. The garden breathes with you. It leans close, and if you listen, you may hear it whisper your name, not the one the world gave you, the older one, the truer one, the name only the trees know, the name you have always carried, folded quietly within your breath. You are not far, you never were, and the garden remembers. And now, dear dreamer, let us return to stillness. Let us fold the journey like a worn and sacred map, carried not to show the way, but to remember there was one. You have wandered through ancient rivers and vanished cities, sat beside mystics and whispered with trees, heard the rustling of the sacred in the breath of scripture, the silence of stars, the hush of your own heart, and all the while, Eden has walked beside you, not as a place, but as a presence, a thread of gold woven through exile and longing, a garden seated in the soul. Tonight, you have remembered not only a story, but a truth, that the Garden of Eden is not behind you, lost in myth, nor ahead and reachable in promise. It is here, in the breath you take now, in the peace that pulls gently at the edges of your awareness, in the lights behind your closed eyes, soft, unfolding, waiting. So let this moment be your gate. Let the cherubim stand down. Let the sword grow still. Let the silence gather like dusk in the branches. And as you drift into sleep, may the path rise softly beneath you, step by step toward the center of the garden, where the tree blooms without end, where the rivers flow without fear, where the names are spoken in light, and where you are already known. Thank you, fellow wanderer, for walking this path tonight. If the whispers of history and mystery have stirred something quiet in you, if the light of these ancient tales still glows faintly in your chest, then leave behind a gentle trace, a like, not a signal but as offering. And if your soul seeks to walk again through the veiled and forgotten realms of our past, subscribe and return again to this circle of dreamers, this quiet place beneath the stars, and let us know from what corner of the world you listen tonight. Let the dreamers gather, across time, across distance, united not by proof, but by wonder. Rest now, the garden is near, and in your sleep, you are already home.